Joining us now is Doug Bauer. He's the CEO of Tri Pointe Homes, and Tony Malkin, the CEO of Empire State Realty Trust. Welcome to both of you. Doug, it's great to have you here. And, there's so many things to unpack. But more broadly, it was the best of times for the home builders just a year or two ago. And now, I don't want to say it's the worst of times, but the mood has certainly shifted.
Yeah, Kelly, thanks for having me on. Let me just break it down into three components: supply, demand, and the consumer. When you think about the supply demand of housing, we've been undersupplied for years. There's an argument that we're millions of homes underbuilt, and we still have the lingering effect of the locked-in resale market, which isn't trading about roughly over 1 million homes a year. On the demand side, we have the millennial and Gen Zs, which are undisputed early innings, a lot of demand there. So that's kind of the supply demand. Then you flip to the consumer and the consumer sentiment. And if you go back to 24, the beginning of 24, the consumer was told rates were going down. The Fed was going to adjust the discount rate and other rates would go down. But what happened, obviously, we know a discount rate went down about 100 bips and mortgage rates went up 100 bips. So the consumer felt a lot of angst in the back half of the year. Now, as we've kind of trended into the first month and a half of this year, they've re-engaged. It's not as strong as it was last year, but sales have definitely picked up. But the consumer is still dealing with a lot of hesitancy about the political climate and other things that could be going on in this world. So even though there's these imbalances with supply and demand and the consumer sentiment, the long-term facts for housing look really good. And to plug Tri Pointe, Tri Pointe's trading below book value. So it's probably a good time to buy Tri Pointe.
Well, and it's interesting, 70% of your buyers are millennial and Gen Z. So I take your point about kind of the pressures that they may be under. Also thought it was interesting, Doug, you've got exposure in California, and you guys are one of the first to really mention the rising cost of home insurance is a deterrent. Wedbush said they think it's the first time this issue has been called out. So it's obvious to any of us, out here in the real world that, of course, these rising insurance costs are going to be a factor. Is it California specific or is it broader?
Well, I think with the weather events that have happened and the fires and the hurricanes and so forth on the East Coast and Florida all the way to the West Coast with the fires, insurance has gotten a lot of attention. And so we, with our Tri Pointe Assurance Agency, we have the ability to help our consumers get to the right insurance needs. So it is a big focus of ours because the cost per month has gone up, but it's still very much available to our consumer.
Yeah, and you have a lot of pockets of strength that you've talked about. Even Austin, we're always curious about some of those markets that were really hot in the pandemic and then have cooled down somewhat. I was curious if you're seeing any impact in Washington where, social media is filled with reports that the housing market is weakening because of some of the cuts from the new administration.
That's a great question. And we were just talking about that at our board meeting, and I was talking to our division president, DC Metro. We build more of a move-up product that is really catered to that professional services worker. And with this current administration, one would gather that as hopefully the government does shrink, and then there's probably some contractual arrangements that are done with professional workers that really are buyer profiles. So we have not felt any effect from what is going on with DOGE.